With Houston having a short turnaround in preparation for the Bills, it's time to have one of those hard conversations. No CJ Stroud for Thursday's game is the reality we now live in.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily podcast on the Houston Texans. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Battle Red Nation, from H-Town to your town. Today's episode and every episode of the Locked On Texans podcast is for the Texan fans all around. A scary show because it's a conversation we really need to dive into on today's episode. Does a 500 Texan team scare you? Why? Well, 500 isn't good enough, but it also isn't bad enough for what you typically want your season to look like once you get ready for the postseason and moving forward. So we'll dive into that. What do I mean? DeMeco Ryans, we want the same thing. You want to see more Jalen Noel. We want to see more Jalen Noel. So let's get that going. Also, we'll look into some of the offensive line talk. Different combination once again for Houston on Sunday. Is that the combination Houston needs to move forward with once everybody is healthy? But just an injury update on CJ Stroud and Jalen Pitre is where I'm going to kick off today's show. I'm your Texas Credential Media member and football analyst, John Hickman, and thank you for making Locked On Texans and the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcast network in the land. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Okay, so listen, life without CJ Stroud and Jalen Pitre. What does that look like? Both CJ Stroud and DB safety Jalen Pitre are still in concussion protocol. According to head coach DeMeco Ryans, they will have to be cleared by Tuesday for them to be capable to have an opportunity to play on Thursday versus Buffalo. While the majority of this conversation will be centered around and about CJ Stroud, what we cannot do is skip over Jalen Pitre being out for Houston, especially considering Houston is playing Josh Allen, right? We know that Jalen being around that line of scrimmage gives Houston the player they need to be smart and reactive when Josh wants to maybe break the pocket. It could force Josh into some of those turnover-worthy plays by containing him, and we know that Josh Allen will give you a turnover-worthy player too. And Houston's back end of that defense, if the ball is in the air, every ball is a 50-50 ball, especially when you got guys like Derek Stingley and Kamari Lassiter back there. When the communication on the back end, is right. So you look at what Jalen Pitre can provide in terms of just getting Josh Allen off his game a little bit. And also, listen, right now, Henry T is missing around 16% of his tackles. So is there trust in him to be that guy to replace Jalen Pitre in that role, or Miles Bryant, I think is a good player, but he isn't the X factor that Jalen Pitre is. I don't think Miles Bryant can run stride for stride with Josh Allen like Jalen Pitre can. I don't think he is as physical enough to bring down a Josh Allen or make a hit, hurt Josh Allen like Jalen Pitre can. So that's a concern for Houston going into this Thursday game, a must-win game like every other game is to close out this year. Now, no CJ spells trouble for the Texans offense, and it's not because Mills has been bad. That's not the case. I do think some things can work in Houston's favor, but right now, Allen has accounted for 11 touchdowns and only 3 interceptions in Buffalo's last 3 games. And they have averaged 28 points per game during that span. The Bills are also converting 75% of their red zone trips. So I'm giving you guys offensive numbers, and I'm sure you're like, okay, what does that have to do with CJ Stroud? Winners of 3 of the last 5, the Bills are hot. And a team like that, you'll need your best of the best players. And both Stroud and Pitre are 2 top 7 to 10 players on this team. One is a franchise quarterback. One is a player that Houston absolutely believes in. So that's important to look at in terms of the matchup that's coming up. This is a hot Bills team. Let's also keep in mind in the last 2 games, Houston has faced 2 mid to bottom half of the league passing defenses. Buffalo, number 2. And I also want to add, with Houston going up against Jacksonville, and they had a blowout win against the Chargers on Sunday. So, that made it hard on Houston to get that 7th spot. And then also going up against Tennessee, you're kind of able to, if you look at quarterback play from both teams are going to allow you to stay in the game, to have the opportunity to win the game. That's not the case with Josh Allen. And it's definitely not the case with Josh Allen when he's going up against a team that is not as talented as he is and some of the things that he can do, right? Stan Norfleet, he's a part of the Texans Locked On Texas Squad Show. He says it all the time. When you have a roster that isn't as talented, you need a freaky quarterback, and that is Josh Allen. And again, 11 touchdowns and 3 interceptions in the last 3 games. So I look at those numbers and I'm thinking to myself, well, Houston is absolutely going to need to score points. That is not only a Davis Mills issue. That is not only a CJ Stroud issue. That is an offensive issue. That is an offensive identity issue. That is a Nick Caley issue. So it all wraps together. But we've seen CJ Stroud make plays when things are breaking down around him more than we have from Davis Mills in the last 3 seasons. And a lot of you guys right now are starting that. Is Davis Mills a better quarterback? Is he the quarterback for this offense? Should he continue to just close out I've seen some of the conversations. I've seen some of the rhetoric. I've seen some of the discourse. Guys, my former co-host, he started the Mills train here on the show several years ago. Davis Mills ain't CJ Stroud. That ain't the case. And we've seen CJ Stroud eliminate bad play calling, eliminate bad protection, eliminate bad options outside at receiver, outside of Nico Collins, or let me not say bad, but just not as talented as maybe the other teams. We've seen CJ Stroud overcome a lot of these issues. And this is on top of being one of the most pressured quarterbacks in the NFL in the last 2 seasons. Let's not get to the point where people are calling for, and I've seen people call CJ Stroud soft because why is he not returning back? And Nico, it was only 1 game. CJ Stroud's hit was to the head from the player and the ground. And everybody's body reacts differently to concussions. And the one thing this franchise does not want to do is put a quarterback out there when he's not ready again. Am I right or wrong? So we're looking at a season where Houston is still fighting to get into the playoffs. And I get it. You want your quarterback out there. But if he's not ready, then he's not ready. And that's why this is a problem for Houston. Davis Mills has played, I think, lights out. But he's played a passing defense in the Jags that is middle of the pack. He's played the Tennessee Titans passing defense that, isn't great at all. L'Jarius Sneed hasn't been bad both times that they played him. The back end of their defense ain't good, and if it ain't for Jeffrey Simmons or Devontae Sweat, they're not doing much defensively. This is different against Buffalo. And Buffalo's defense, again, number 2 in the NFL passing defense, they are also scoring 28 points per game. They are also converting on third downs a lot. They're also getting to the red zone and scoring points a lot. When you have a team like that, you got to match talent for talent. You got to go band for band. And Davis Mills could be a band, but he ain't Josh Allen band, and he's not CJ Stroud's band. So I am worried for Houston in this game, and the outcome could be scary for Houston if they don't have an adequate game plan to just make sure that, hey, Davis Mills is taken care of. We got the guys on the outside that make sense, right? And our protection for you is going to make sense. But when we get down to the money zone, we got plays that are already drawn up and scripted to go up against that defense. And we talk about, listen, DeMeco Ryans, you want to see the same thing we want to see, and seeing that outcome could lead to a more explosive offense and also just better protection for Davis Mills and for CJ Stroud when he returns back. Before we dive into that conversation, listen, it's the most wonderful time of the year. It's the holiday season, right? The NFL is in action. The NBA is back, right? Family's going to get together. You know, it's a great conversation starter. What's your parlay look like? You're following live bets? There's no better place to get in on the sports action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making the late push, like the Houston Texans. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets to use when you play and win your first $5 bet. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Getting back to the conversation on the things we want to see, the things DeMeco wants to see, they all should coexist. We should all get along, and those things should be seen together. So what does DeMeco want to see? Cap wants to see more in Jalen Noel. I want to see more Jalen Noel. Fans want to see more Jalen Noel. And hopefully the McNairs want to see more Jalen Noel, right? Christian Kirk snap percentage against the Jaguars, against Tennessee, 51%. In the slide, Jalen Noel snap percentage 26%. DeMeco says, listen, the nameplate of the rookie is coming off, then whatever nameplate is attached to Christian Kirk needs to be revised. And I think let's talk about that. I don't think Houston should just completely do away with Christian Kirk, but we are in week 11, 12. The season is close to being done. It's about to get cold outside. Well, we know in the NFL, once it gets cold outside, playoffs are around the corner. That's where Houston wants to end their season. All right. From a receiver standpoint, and what the expectation is of a receiver for this team, Christian Kirk, in my opinion, has been somewhat comparable to Dare Ogunbowale. Now, granted, the numbers are completely different, right? But remember early in the season when Dare would be out there on third downs or, getting carries over, or getting opportunities rather, over Woody Marks. A lot of us thought to ourselves, why? What does this do for a couple of things? What does it do for the team momentum at the time? What does it do for the offensive productivity? But what does it do for the development of the rookie? Right? And the 2024 draft class and 2025 draft class is so night and day. I think it's funny to even talk about, simply because the 2024 draft class, those guys that are studs now, they went over to DeMeco. Blake Fisher, he's been up and down. I think he's done some, positive things this year. Again, I say it all the time. My everydayers have heard me say this. Kudos to the coaching staff for not throwing him away. But come on, Kalen. Those guys went over to DeMeco. And look how fast they got ready for the NFL game. Rapid growth. Okay. 2025 draft class. They come over and they are handed over to Nick Haley. DeMeco in 2024, being a defensive coordinator, being a defensive play caller over in San Fran, being around Robert Saleh and understanding how to call defense and having just an understanding of the nuances of the game as a play caller, he got gifted Kamari and Kalen. And also Will Anderson the year before that. And then also in free agency, got Azeez Al-Shaair. Okay. That's what DeMeco Ryans got. This year, the rookies got Nick Haley and Cole Popovich, and then their free agency was Christian Kirk. if it just feels like offensively it works against themselves whenever they put Christian Kirk out there. And where we are right now in the season, week 11, it just feels like whatever the thought of whatever the idea of what Christian Kirk can bring, it's just an idea at this point still. And it hasn't done anything for the Houston offense consistently. It hasn't. And so you keep running into this wall, putting them out there when this offense needs explosiveness. They need a guy that can make a play down the field. That's not Nico Collins. And that player this year has been Jalen Noel. So they got to get him on the field more. And it's important to just look at, okay, when we start to take away snaps and opportunities from Dare and even Damian Pierce at one point, and we started to put Woody Marks out there, some good things started to happen for the offense. Let's take that same idea and make it into a reality with Jalen Noel moving forward. Now the offensive line combination, another offensive line combination, a different one for the umpteenth time this year. Ariante Aristry, Jared Patterson, Jake Andrews, Titus Howard, Trent Brown, of course, manning the right side. Aristry had 4 pressures and I think 1 or 2 sacks accounted to him. The tight ends and the running backs had to do a better job on Sunday. They accounted for some of those sacks, but Jared Patterson at left guard, 1 pressure. Jake Andrews, 1 pressure. Titus Howard, 1 pressure. Trent Brown, 1 pressure. Now, those numbers may not tell the full story of the game, but the numbers are the numbers, and they do tell some story of the game. DeMeco says he liked the offensive line combination, thought they did well for playing together for the first time. And I tweeted, I wish this combination of the offensive line could have been seen earlier. Simply because from the jump, my whole thing with Trent Brown was if he is healthy, he would have been Houston's best offensive lineman. In his 2 games started, he's allowed 3 pressures, 1 sack per PFF. The advantage for that combination of Howard and Brown could very well be the boost in the run game on the right side and just the IQ that they bring to the game. Houston's running backs averaged their highest yards per carry when running behind the right side of the offensive line on Sunday, 10 yards per carry, 5 yards after contact per attempt. Those 2 could very well be the physical body movers Houston has been looking for all year. And you talk about the advantage that could bring once they get into the red zone, specifically if Houston gets in between that 10-yard line to the end zone. I think that could be an advantage, understanding, looking at what the personnel is versus who they're playing. And with Ingram coming back, Houston could very well experiment with one of those players at left guard, giving them to close out the year maybe their best offensive line combination. This offense looks completely different when they are able to run the ball, and it's up to Kaylee and staff to figure out what the best combination for this team looks like, right? And we talk about Houston getting down there to the 5-yard line, which they've done multiple times this year, and I think they've come away with maybe 1 score, maybe 2, but it's an issue for them. They got to be better. But when I look at what Titus Howard and Trent Brown could possibly be, and also Houston still experimenting with the jumbo package, you put Titus Howard, Trent Brown, and Blake Fisher on the right side, heavy up, or maybe a fullback behind them, and you get behind, you get a running back behind that group running straight forward to that side, in between the 10 and the red zone, end zone, then my expectation is they should be able to run the ball a little bit better. So it's important for Houston to figure that out because they're gonna be going up against some good defensive lines and just good defenses altogether. And again, their problem has been all year. If they score 1 touchdown in all of these games, we're either looking at a blowout or we're looking at a team that is not 5-5 on the year. They're not 500. But with the Houston Texans being 500 on the year, does that scare any of you guys? Are you concerned that 500 don't get you nowhere?
Today's show is brought to you by our friends over there at Peloton. Look, folks, it's time to break through the busiest time of the year with a brand new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus that's powered by Peloton IQ. It's Peloton's most elevated technology and equipment yet that gives you real-time guidance, and it gives you endless ways to move, whether you want to work out by yourself or if you want to work out with your favorite instructor, like my personal favorite, Alex Toussaint. He always gets me fired up to tackle the day. And the thing I like about Peloton, it helps me achieve more in less times. They have features that help you plan, stay motivated, track your progress, and Peloton IQ also provides personalized workout plans and recommendations. That's something that I use right now during the busiest time of the year covering the NFL. They plan my workouts for me based on my mood, my vibe, and also my favorite instructors. So make sure you check it out and use it, because it also helps you correct your form in real time, and it maximizes your reps. It counts your reps so that you can do it smarter, safer, and more efficient. Let yourself run, lift, flex, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton cross-training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Closing out today's episode of the Locked On Texans podcast, I think this is a good conversation to have. Listen, 500, you're not good enough for the playoffs. You're not bad enough for a good pick. Now, keep in mind right now, we know that one of the things we got to do, I'm going to give Nick Caserio credit for, and I'm always going to do, is, when things are going well, I got to give credit to that person that's getting it done. Currently the Washington Commanders are not a good team, so their second round pick goes to Houston, and that's a damn good pick right now. So I think it's I think that's a top 40 pick currently for Houston, which is a good thing. But not good enough for the playoffs, not bad enough for the draft. Does that scare any of you guys? And I'm gonna talk about why it could be viewed as something scary, but it also could be viewed as a positive. You're not good enough for the playoffs. Okay, we understand how the season started for Houston, 0-3, and then you go on the road. Oh, no, not on the road. You lose games against Denver, which Houston was up in before the injury, and even down to the last drive. You lose games against that first Jacksonville game. So, you look at some of the games that Houston has lost, but then you also look at how Houston has rebounded 5-2 in their last 7 games, and I think there are positives that can be pulled out of it. The issue is people don't want to talk about the positives that can be pulled out from it, because most people feel like it just was a crap show from the start. And I can understand that, because it was. We all saw the same thing for 3 games, and 3 7/5 of a start up until the fourth quarter against Tennessee. And then Houston put it together against Baltimore. They lose against Seattle, but then they start to piece together a couple of more games. I think, if I'm being honest, 500 may get, and you can't end 500 in this season no more. It's 17 games, so 8-9, 9-8, but getting to a point where you're not good enough for the playoffs or bad enough for a good draft pick, that could get some of these guys another year, because and I'm talking about Nick Caley, Nick Caserio, Cole Popovich, all of those decisions and hires that were made this offseason from Nick Caserio, because the talking point would be, well, we had to figure some things out early in the season, but when we did figure it out, this was the outcome. And I think it's important to look at that conversation now, because Houston right now is literally a 500 team. Do you want to clean house? Do you not want to clean house? Where you got to look at the numbers, and you got to look at how things transpired at the beginning of the year, dating back to the offseason programs, and maybe even the draft, and all of those things are combined. So Houston is a 500 team, and it shouldn't scare you right now, because it simply speaks towards them being able to fight back from the adversity of starting 0-3 on the year. I don't think it should necessarily scare Houston fans at the end of the year because, for one, you make the playoffs in back-to-back years. You win the division back-to-back years. You win playoff games in back-to-back years. This could very well be a slump. Houston also had one of the toughest schedules to open up the year, well, for the season. Together, the Rams, the Bucks, Seattle, Denver, those are playoff teams. Now they got to play Buffalo, playoff team. Kansas City, playoff team. They got to play Chargers again, who they beat in the playoffs, but a playoff team. They're playing a lot of playoff teams this year. And I know from a fan experience, when you don't play playoff teams, then you have a better shot at winning games. And when Houston has not played playoff teams, aside from Baltimore, who was extremely banged up and their defense was atrocious at the time, they've beaten these teams that are not playoff teams from a season ago. So it's kind of a hard subject to talk about. I think most people still want Houston to clean house. They want the McNairs to clean house regardless of how this season ends. Everybody has their way, the right to feel their way, if you ask me. But it does speak to how Houston rebounded from adversity. And it ain't no brownie points. You can't win on participation trophies in this league or in life. If you don't get the job done, then you don't get the job done. And that always warrants being reviewed and looked at. But I think overall, hey, listen, Houston will still get a good draft pick. They still would have 2 second-round picks. And I'm of the thought Houston still needs a new general manager, regardless of what happens with Nick Kelly and Cole Popovich and the coaching staff. And if that was truly a DeMeco call, then maybe he sticks around. If it wasn't a DeMeco call, then, it is what it is. This is the NFL. But Houston will still have good assets to work with. Houston is in a good spot right now. They're in the best spot that they could have been in. Asked for, actually. Because how the season started, I didn't think that they were going to win. I didn't think Houston was going to be at this point. 5 games, I knew that they would win eventually, but I didn't think that they'd be at this point where they're competing for a playoff spot. I didn't. You guys heard me say this. I thought that once they lost to Denver, their chances of making the playoffs would be 0, and they still got it mathematically. And in terms of who they have to play, they still got a shot to make it. They got to win on Thursday, of course. They win on Thursday. I think that they get that 7 seed spot. That also would knock out Buffalo from the 5th seed. That'll knock them down. So, again, you look at the numbers games at the end of the year and the percentages and head-to-head matchups that could play into the favor of Houston. They have that head-to-head matchup over Baltimore and I believe Jacksonville right now. So, they are a hungry team led by a hungry coach, and this is a hungry roster. Please continue to watch Locked On Texans podcast throughout the year, throughout the week and throughout the year as I continue to cover the Houston Texans, and also subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, ladies and gents, Texan fans all around, peace.